Yeah.
Yep.
Hi guys, Ed here. Just checking in on, I'm going to look at my newspaper today for Wednesday afternoon.
Wednesday.
Yeah, good. They really do blend into one another the days at the moment. Just checking in on Wednesday at midday with all things workplace relations and how they are impacted by COVID-19. And starting, as I suspected we would, and we started to push yesterday, to increase the narrative about return to work. I don't know about you guys, but I had a pretty notable difference in what I'm seeing on the way into work this morning. I popped down to my local beach for a swim, which is now open. And what I saw down there was a lot of people. I then went to try and get a coffee. It took me 15 minutes to get a coffee this morning. Maybe I'm just going to the wrong coffee shop, I don't know. But it took me 15 minutes to get a coffee, which tells me that people are out and about and they're busy again. I mean, this particular coffee shop looks like it's doing a roaring trade, which is great to see. And there was then lots of traffic on the way in this morning. So I'm starting to see, and I suspect you are as well, that people are moving again. Now, none of us are epidemiologists. Maybe there are some watching, I don't know. But if you are, give us a shout out. But I suspect we're small business owners rather than epidemiologists. And that being the case, we don't know whether that's the right thing for people to be doing. I've got no idea if that's going to cause a second wave of virus and all the other things that people are worried about. All we can do is prepare for the worst, but plan for the best. And that leaves us in quite a tricky situation, because planning for the best right now means starting to rethink what opening your workplace looks like. There will be some transitional questions between JobKeeper and opening workplace that I suspect we'll start to hear a few of today. Oh, I've just stood people down and I've got them on JobKeeper, but now it looks like I'm going to be able to open. There's some talk about cinemas opening in July, for example. Restaurants and cafes are said to be one of the first cabs off the rank at the cabinet meeting on Friday, and the news that will come out of that. What I do know is that the newspapers today are littered with information like this, which says, headline, front of the Fin Review, let's get 1 million back to work. Interested to see why it's only 1 million, to be honest, by the way. Another article I read today said that something like 5 million people will be covered by JobKeeper and having their salary paid for by JobKeeper. I'm assuming a lot of them are not going to be working from the nature of the conversations that we've been having on here. But anyway, yesterday the government has made a very firm step forward in terms of returning to people work. Getting their workplaces ready has been very much a mantra that the government is pushing. They sort of do my job for me, to be honest, and I certainly don't want to be sounding like I'm delighting in the confusion and complexity of all of this, but I was reading through what the government is doing to help us get workplace ready. And it said this, to facilitate the reopening of business, the government has prepared a series of tools, including a website that divides business into 23 industry sectors and provides no less than 1,300 pages of information. Now, if ever there was a time when we didn't need 23 business sectors and 1,300 pieces of information, it's now. I think that what we really need is simplicity and understanding as to how to get back to work. I had a property meeting this morning about our offices and had a good, healthy debate with my team that's in that particular meeting about what we should be doing for our offices. So we've got various signs up, increased things like hand sanitizer around the place, lots of guidance about social distancing. We've taken chairs out of meeting rooms where we think that would encourage too many people to be in those rooms, all sorts of things like that. Then on top of that, we were having debates about whether we need to start providing staff with wireless keyboards, because they shouldn't be sitting at each other's desks and using each other's keyboards. I kind of had to put a stop to it and say, guys, this is getting faintly ridiculous. We've told the business we're in a cash preservation mode. I can't then start buying lots of new things around the office and new computers and different stands. You can't on the one hand speak to your staff about cash preservation and discussing how jobs and hours and work and otherwise might be at risk. And on the other hand, having to start splashing out cash on all these things. And my worry is very much at the moment, this narrative about becoming workplace ready is just going to lead to a stream of cost for businesses. Forget about the cost of just understanding what it means, but also the cost of having to go out and buy things or spend more money on cleaners and all of those things that are additional costs that businesses don't need at the moment. We talked a bit yesterday about in the restaurant industry, great if that is one of the first industries back to something approaching normal. But these are businesses with tight profit margins who, if they have too many impositions from a safety perspective, they're just simply not going to be operating at a profit, so they won't operate. Frankly, it's as simple as that. And there'll be plenty of you on here listening that do own restaurants and cafes. Who would know exactly what I'm talking about, which is if you're really required to start putting 1.5 to 2 meters between tables, you haven't got enough tables in your restaurant to operate. So those sorts of things I'm hoping are going to be pragmatic as more and more information comes out. But there's 1,300 pieces of information. As I say, the government sort of does our marketing for us. The fact that they're chucking all of that information at us and saying, go and work it out. That's what we're going to do. We're going to be doing it for our clients. We're going to be getting in touch with Maria. What did we get to yesterday? Maria.
I'll defer to what you Maria.
Well, bearing in mind I didn't know who the famous Aussie interview guy is. I'm probably not a great person to ask on this, but I'm going to go with Maria today. Probably change that. Early Learning Centre, who we're speaking to via this yesterday, is a client of ours. We're going to be making sure we get out to see them. Nice excuse to visit the South Coast as well, and speak to them about what their obligations are as a childcare centre, because there's going to be a lot of pain and confusion around this. And I'd say, you thought JobKeeper was confusing. This is going to be even worse, frankly, in terms of understanding what you're obliged to do, what you're not, what are the enforcement procedures if you don't do it, what happens if one of your employees rings up whoever the right regulator is going to be and said, I'm being forced into the office and they're having too many people in meeting rooms. You could end up with people blowing whistles all over the place. Who's going to deal with that? What's the response by the government to that? What's going to happen to you as a business? There's a myriad of questions there that we want to help you through, being totally open with you. These things are moving so quickly that we're having to work out exactly at the moment what those 23 industry things say on the SafeWork website and what the 1,300 pages say. But if they wanted to make it any more confusing, I think they probably would have struggled to. So that's where we are on getting people back to work. But there really is a different narrative today, I think. And that's not to say we're closing the door completely on JobKeeper. JobKeeper is alive and well. I'm really keen to hear if people are starting to get any information from JobKeeper, any payments, from their JobKeeper application, so we can monitor those going forward. And we'll start to look at some of the questions around ongoing issues, just because, and we were talking to a partner of ours last night, saying just because JobKeeper started to work, it doesn't mean the problems, hopefully it started to work, I should say, if it does work over the course of the next few days, doesn't mean the problems that we've been discussing here go away. So the cash flow problem as a particular one will continue for you. It will actually get worse over the course of May than it was in April, because at least in April, we were all able to sort of somewhat fudge the situation and not do back pays until the 8th of May, which is hopefully no more than a week before we get the money back from the government. But for May, we're going to be paying 3 fortnights, starting with the one that we're currently in, before we get the money back. So there's going to be actually much more cash flow burden on businesses in May than there was in April. We're also, as businesses, digging deeper and deeper into our cash reserves, so that cash flow burden is getting worse and worse, frankly. And we'll need to start considering whether, being totally frank with you guys, whether you are burying your head in the sand of JobKeeper or whether you're using it appropriately. Are you using JobKeeper to avoid tough decisions in your business about how you should actually be managing and understanding your staffing requirements? Or are you using it properly to either hibernate your business through this challenging time and retain talent? or to get a proper subsidy from the government. We need to have some frank conversations on here about that, guys. We can't sit here and just say, all's good, JobKeeper's here. We're just going to take JobKeeper until September, and the world miraculously in September is going to be better. September will rush up on us like nobody's business. Just because it's a bit sunny outside today and people were down at Bondi Beach this morning doesn't mean that the world is back to normal. And we've got to be careful in not confusing what we're seeing outside with the ongoing mantra, which is to think clearly under pressure, and make sure that we are preparing for the worst but planning for the best. It's a funny one, that actually, in terms of our internal position. I had to go out to my staff last night with our next round of communications about understanding which of our roles are busy and not at the moment, and we're just going through a process of identifying and speaking to people about that at the moment. But I woke up this morning and my initial reaction was, when I was down at Bondi and it was so busy, I was like, oh, did we speak too soon? I said, suddenly the world's okay. And you have to kind of keep reminding yourself as a business owner that just because it's been busy down at Bondi and it's taken bloody ages to get a coffee, it doesn't mean the world is back to normal. And we might all be willing and wishing it back to normal. And if, in fact, if you look again at the front page here, just the sentiment is just so much different today. Get 1 million people back to work, business gets set up for COVID world, post-COVID world. This one here, stronger recovery on the cards, rule relaxation opens up door, all of these different things. The paper is littered with positivity today for the first time in months. And you can easily get swept up in that and think, oh great, it's all changing, it's all happening. A few things might still happen. I remain completely, and I'm not going to get deep into it because I'm not an epidemiologist, I keep reminding myself, I remain utterly perplexed as to how we can really have got away so lightly with this in terms of the medical consequences. I'd love to pat our politicians on the back for it, but it seems to me to be pretty bloody unlikely that in countries around the world where they've done similar things to us and had a totally different outcome, that we're just completely home and hosed on this and that there's not going to be any more problems. I'm certainly preparing for the worst, which is that my presumption is that we haven't heard the last of COVID, and there may well be further lockdowns. There may well be second waves that cause that. And I've just got to make sure my staff, my business are prepared for that, because if I don't, I'm not doing my job. We're still, in my view, we might be closer to the end than the beginning, but we're still not that far out of the crisis mode of making sure that you're preparing for the worst but planning for the best. So don't get carried away, guys. Let's keep elevating this discussion out of crisis and into planning. Start thinking about our businesses. If you've applied for JobKeeper and you're sitting there waiting for it, don't just sit there biting your nails. Start thinking about what that actually means for your business, and as to whether you are going to need to, at some stage between now and September, reassess your cost base within your staff, try and understand whether you're kidding yourselves with JobKeeper and whether you need to do something more than simply take the government subsidy and then have to do a whole load of change in September. There'll be a big queue at Employ Shaw's door, I suspect, in September, frankly, when we come out of this and the money dries up and people are left with a big staff cost that they're having to manage at that point. So on that note, Stewie, what have you got for me?
Sure, let's kick it off with this from Sarah. We're trying to figure out how to safely have vulnerable workers come back to work. We're in fashion retail and we're lucky to have very hard-working and loyal employees. However, we're very quickly trying to create risk assessments, but all the government advice is so far vague. Leaving these team members at home on JobKeeper cannot be the solution indefinitely. What's your advice?
My honest advice would be give it to a professional, frankly. We're here to help with exactly that problem. So have a look on employshaw.com.au/workplace ready. And you'll see, you can go on there and just register your interest if you're not a client. So if you're a client, first and foremost, we're doing this as part of the service. It's essentially free. We're not going to do it. It would charge you at all. I'm going to charge you to come and visit you or anything. We're just going to come out and help you and get workplace ready. If you're not a client and you want to do this, then we're charging $500 for us to come out and consult to have a look at your workplace and get it ready. rather than you pouring through SafeWork, WorkSafe, Australia, whatever those websites are with tons of information, give it to us. If you do want to do that, go and have a look on SafeWork's website, try and work out what it is that you're meant to do from the 23 industry segments that they've put up there, and work through it. But I was thinking this morning about life in general. It was really deep before I got on here. Probably don't do too much thinking at that level of depth at the moment. It's a bit dangerous. But I was thinking about the concept of legal obligation, and let's apply this to our workplaces at the moment. The concept of your baseline legal obligation, that's the minimum of what you're meant to do. Above that, there's kind of like a pub test obligation, what people think you should do. And above that, you've probably got your own set of values, which is what you think you should do. And I try to live my life and run my business according to that set of values at the top, rather than down at, skirting around the legal edges of things. That's not what I want to do. I try to do the right thing by what I perceive by my set of values. I hope that in doing that I achieve at minimum the pub test, which is I'm doing the right thing in the view of others. What I don't want to do is just rely on, like I say, skirting around the legal edges. So as that applies to something like a retail operation at the moment, you could go on the SafeWork website and tick the right boxes and just be ready on a technical basis. But your problem is actually deeper than that, and that's something you're never going to get from SafeWork or anyone else, which is a cultural issue. You've got a pub test issue, which is that people at the pub test level, your staff, are saying, are you doing enough? And this was a penny that dropped for me pretty recently, to be honest, because I was originally vis-a-vis keeping my workplace safe in the context of COVID-19, operating actually at the legal level. I was letting myself down as to where I want to be. I'm now saying, no, I've got to at least be at the pub test level, because if I want my staff to come back and be happy about being here, they have to feel happy. Forget about what SafeWork says. They've got to feel happy. So in a retail environment, you're going to need to be communicating heavily with your staff, consulting with them. We talked about this briefly yesterday. That's going to be a really new thing for a lot of you guys in terms of the basic safety provisions of your workplace. Actually going to them now and saying, guys, this is what SafeWork says to us. We're wondering what else we can do to make you feel happy. So who knows, maybe that is a Perspex screen above the cash register. Maybe that's the reality of what you want to do. And if you're running certain retail businesses, you might be cringing at the thought of that, ruining the aesthetic of your business and so forth. But you might need to consider things like that if that's what your staff are craving in order to come back and service you. We're not going to be in a perfect world. Too many coffees again. Okay, go for it.
Okay. This one from Naomi. She's a client. Can I confirm that if an eligible employee who is on a rostered break for 2 weeks, in parentheses, we are a fly-in, fly-out, drive-in, drive-out business, and they normally don't get paid for their rostered break, I will still pay them the JobKeeper top-up to $1,500 for the fortnight's rostered break?
I believe that's the case. A really interesting question, actually. I believe that's the case. We'll review that with our advisors for you as well. But I believe that come what may, you've got to get the $1,500 top up, even if there wasn't paid during that period, in exactly the same way that, say, in a regular and systematic casual that is on holiday and doesn't get paid for that holiday, they're still considered eligible for that period, and you've got to pay them.
Okay. From Natalie, if a client has a downturn of 30% or more in May 2020, does that mean we can only claim fortnight 3 and 4 of the JobKeeper, even though we've topped them up to $1,500 a fortnight for the April fortnights too?
So it depends on when you make your application, and if you're making your application based on May, my understanding is you shouldn't make that application until the May fortnights. If you've already topped people up, that is a bit of a challenge. What you might look at doing is making the application for April based upon a quarter projection rather than your May projection. So you say, actually, May's down, I'm projecting that June's going to be down. Overall, the quarter is 30% down. Reminding you that's what we're doing at EmploySure. Our April wasn't 30% down, but we're worried that we're going to get hit in May and June and get that 30%. So we've applied in April with our Q1 projection. Sorry, it's Q4 in Australia, but our April quarter projection.
This from Sam, a client, Country Chef Bakeries. We have a long-term systematic casual who started on the 9th of April 2019. They've chosen to remain a casual employee, so no concerns about being seen as a casual. The advice I've received from employer advisors so far is not to include in JobKeeper. Is the 12 months a really strict date, or would you recommend including a casual who is short on the 12 months by 9 days?
So they're not 9 days out. Actually, they're a month and 9 days because it's on the 1st of March is the date. So I wouldn't include them. I think it's let's remind ourselves as to the way in which this is going to work. I've talked before about there being really an employer subsidy circumstance, which is if you at Country Chef Sham. I don't think that's even a tongue twister. You, Sam, at Country Chef Bakeries, thank you for your business. If you are still operating, as I suspect you might be as a bakery, and you've got that employee coming in and working, you're going to be getting funding from the government to essentially subsidise their wages, which is great. That's the best possible circumstance for you. So you've got an incentive, in essence, to put as many people on nomination and eligibility as possible. The risk is the government comes back and audits that at some time and says, no, that's the 1st of March was the date. You shouldn't have put them on. There is a risk of that. I don't know how high a risk. Is the reward worth it? That's a business question for you, Sam, but I wouldn't encourage it personally.
Okay. Michelle, she's a client from Sydney Cats and Dogs Home. It looks like in the ATO JobKeeper update that local government fees can be excluded from turnover for organisations like ours. At Sydney Dogs and Cats Home, we receive fees from local councils to act as their pound. Can you please confirm that this is the case and we are right to exclude those amounts?
Hi, Michelle. Thank you, as ever, for your business. I think you are potentially our staff's favourite client. I know that from when you've brought dogs into the office, you get a lot of fans here. So, look, I'm going to lean on that to make sure we answer that properly as a client. I don't want to. I'd need to actually look at the rules to remind myself of the specifics of any income for you as a charitable organisation from government, to see whether they're captured by those fresh rules that came out. So let's look at that specifically for you and give you a call.
Jenny says, I've completed all 3 steps on the business portal for JobKeeper, April declared, and have submitted my single touch payroll to the ATO indicating the eligible employees. Is there anything further I need to do to get payment ASAP for the first 2 fortnights? And when can I expect to receive that payment?
So a couple of things. Make sure you've done your employee notification obligations out of that, and you've made sure that obviously your employees should have signed the form, nomination form, but also notify that you've applied and shared their details through the single touch payroll system. And then what you should do is see payment, fingers crossed, this week. There was some murmur that the ATO would try and surprise us all and pay early, but as a backstop, it's meant to be the 14th of May. There is a risk, I think, still that they're overwhelmed by the application process and don't do it. I'm not willing that risk or problem on them. I want quite the opposite, but I think let's be prepared that there may be some lag. So there we go. That's the answer. I'm quite relieved, actually. The 2 questions before I didn't answer. I thought I was on a roll for not answering questions. I don't think I've not answered 2 on the trot before. So I'm back. I've answered a question.
Excellent news. A short one from Teresa. I'm reopening an office soon. Can I insist or even request staff to have flu vaccines?
Good question. You can't insist that on someone. That's it. We do it here. For example, we offer to pay for them. I think at times have even brought medics into the office to do them. There are services that do that. But you can't force someone to do it. That's a personal choice in respect of their own personal health that they would need to choose. We talked a bit about whether you can require them to download the COVID app. I've been thinking about that overnight. I do think you could, particularly in the sentiment where the government wants everyone to do it, you could stipulate that, because it's not about their individual health, which is their personal domain that they need to choose. It is about the contact with your staff and your obligation to provide a safe workplace. You might argue the same is true of flu vaccine, but in truth, you can't force vaccines on people.
Yep. From Donna. For the month of April, there's the deadline of the 8th of May for making sure top-up payments are made. Will the same apply for May? Or are we expected to do all top-ups each pay cycle? I couldn't seem to find a definite answer about that one.
It's Donna, is it?
Yes.
So the answer to that is, Donna, is that the deadline, as they're calling it for April, is, you're right, the 8th of May. It's not actually stipulated anywhere. It's just said on the website, but we're all pretty close to the payment date now. So let's get April paid by the 8th of May. There is that slight risk, of course, that you find out that consequently you're not eligible, but that they don't seem to be telling us whether we're eligible or not. For future fortnights, you're meant to pay in the fortnight. My recommendation is you carry on your normal pay cycle. You don't do a sweep up at the end of the month based on that. You're meant to pay in the fortnight. So do it as closely as you can by following your normal pay cycle.
Okay. From Gareth, if our team was stood down during the first JobKeeper fortnight and applied for and have been paid annual leave to the value of $1,500, can the JobKeeper subsidy be used to subsidise that, or should they receive an extra $1,500 and have their annual leave balance credited?
You can do either. So you could say where we agreed to do that out of your annual leave, and we're now using the JobKeeper to subsidise that, Gareth. But or if you were feeling more generous, frankly, you could recredit the employee's leave balance. That's your choice. And if you think about it in terms of annual leave, the reason why the ACTU didn't like this, and the reason why your employees might not like it, is that it looks and sounds like you're taking government subsidy to pay something that they've already earned. And if they're at home anyway, they're saying, look, I could have had the $1,500 without losing the leave that I've worked hard for and earned already. There is something a bit icky about that, but the government expressly have said, no, look, in the round, it's just not worth getting too fussed about. So employers are entitled to do that. The employer benefit of that, of course, is that you're using government subsidy to reduce a leave balance on your balance sheet, which is a good thing for the employer. So you might want to do that because right now, you might not be worried so much about that particular cash flow, therefore you will it. But in the future, if you ended up having to make that employee redundant, for example, you would have less to pay out on termination of their employment.
Alicia says, hi, Amazeballs Ed. Love lunch with you each day. She goes on to say, our office has stayed open, but we have some team members working from home. As some school levels are expected to go back next week, should we be asking our home workers to come back into the office, and what's involved in getting them back in a positive and professional manner?
Hi, Alicia. So the rule remains that people should work from home if reasonably practicable for them to do so. So if they are working from home, it sounds like it's got something to do with the school closures that's leading them. Maybe they've got childcare responsibilities. If their kids are back at school and they are able to work, that's a slightly different question to whether is it no longer reasonable for them to work from home. And that's the case at the moment. It may change on Friday when we hear more from the cabinet. We'll keep an eye on that and we'll talk about it then. But you could do what we're doing at the moment, which is saying to people at home, is there any reason it's no longer reasonable for you to work from home? And we hear lots of different things as to why that might be, from workspace isn't set up properly. I'm having to sit on a sofa and coffee table. It's just not good for my health. It's not good for my mental health, whatever it is. And we're looking at what's reasonable for them and bringing people in on that basis. So you could offer that up to your staff. If you're doing that, I propose that you communicate very clearly about it. Interestingly, from my perspective, I think that self-reflecting on what we did, I think we could have communicated more about it. we didn't want to sort of overly encourage people back to the office, because that felt like that was almost anti what the government is continuing to stipulate. We didn't want to be anti it. We were just trying to operate in the right way for our employees. Like I say, we're not trying to skim the rules. We're just trying to do them in the right way with the right and commercial interpretation. We could have made clearer what people could come back for, and equally what we would be doing in the workplace to ensure that it was workplace ready for them.
This one, a variation on a theme from Lisa. She says, thanks for your daily updates. Your live streams are fantastic and you've been instrumental in navigating us through JobKeeper. Question, when the employee signs the nomination form and we start to pay them JobKeeper, but at a later date it turns out they are not eligible due to visas, will the ATO chase them for the money or will they chase us?
There's a joint and several liability is the very technical legal language for this in the rules, that basically if an employee signs the nomination form incorrectly, they've got liability along with you. So it basically means they can come after either of you. Whether they will, I don't know.
Okay. Again, a variation on a theme, this time from Bonneville Golf Resort. The third JobKeeper fortnight payment to employees is due by Sunday, 10th of May. How is this meant to work when we don't pay our employees until Wednesday the 13th? We cannot know how much to top up the wages of those who are working to ensure we meet the $1,500 fortnight minimum.
I would wait until the 13th is my answer to that. I think the rules are a bit cockeyed on this. I don't think they've amazingly factored in the fact that people don't pay on JobKeeper fortnights always. A number of you are saying, I can see versions of this question coming up as I speak, which is saying, what do I do? I haven't been paid yet for the first two. Am I really sticking my neck out for the third one? Yes, probably. Do I change my payroll cycle? No. Really good question yesterday saying, it's very similar to this one. We're I think it was a hospitality business, and we just don't know how many hours people have done until the end of the 10th at very earliest. So we can't pay until the 11th, even though the rules say that you've got to pay within the fortnight. So my view is you need to pay in accordance with your pay cycle, because remembering by the time you actually come to claim JobKeeper for May, it's going to be the 4th or 5th of June. And really what the government's going to care about then is that the people have been paid by that day.
This one from Marilyn. We have a pub and we're on stand down. I have JobKeeper in place and require workers to come in and do cleaning and maintenance. I've had a great response from all staff, but my chef, who doesn't want to do it, he has now gone on sick leave. Does the JobKeeper cover sick leave? Can I make him redundant, which is what I was going to do in the beginning? I've only had the business since November.
Good question. So it sounds like I'm smiling to myself, and apologies for any chefs watching this, but our business was born out of a chef issue. So I've got a sort of certain fondness for erratic chefs that go off on long-term sick leave and things like that. That seems to happen a bit in the industry. But the reality there is that if you have them already stood down, and that so they weren't working, the chef has gone off on sick leave. If he or she has already signed the nomination form, then they are an eligible employee, and you'll carry on getting the JobKeeper and paying them the JobKeeper even whilst they're on sick leave. It will pay for the sick leave, and even if they run out of sick leave, then you're still going to have to pay the $1,500. So that's dealing with sick leave discreetly. You can't do JobKeeper enabled stand down, which you don't seem to need to do because you've already had a stand down of sorts that's already in place by the time this person's gone on sick leave. But you can't do it if someone is on sick leave at the time you try and do the stand down. There's a bit of a quirk there that you need to be careful of. And then going forward, what do you do about whether the chef carries on working for you or not? Certainly, I wouldn't be encouraging anything that looked like reacting to their illness by dismissing them. That would be unlawful. What I'd be doing, quite frankly, at the moment, is playing a longer game than this and just waiting to see how long the chef is going to be off on sick leave. If that overlaps with any period that you need to start reopening, then you might need to seek alternative arrangements, or at least on a temporary basis. and then you'll need to reassess the chef's employment in time. But that's exactly the sort of tricky. I don't mean to belittle or gamify workplace relations in saying this, but I said it yesterday and I'd stand by it, that working with staff in situations like this is a bit like a game of chess. You don't want to rush into a highly reactive situation and do something silly because you're frustrated. You want to stand back from this situation, allow the chef to go on sick leave and follow the right sick leave procedures, and then watch the situation evolve as you go from there.
Quick one from Leslie, and with a few followers to revisit. Are you aware of anyone being reimbursed by the ATO as yet?
I'm not. I suspect you'll hear it here first, given the amount of people that are following. So we haven't. If anyone has, give us a shout out. The feed that I'm seeing come up here seems to say that people generally haven't. Everyone's waiting on tenterhooks.
Okay. And Ed, you've touched on this many times before, but worth a revisit this time from Kathy. We're a trust. Both trustees are and have always been employed by the business. As employees, are we both allowed to claim JobKeeper?
If you're both employees, yes, and you're both eligible in terms of when you've been employees from and so forth, then yes. And of course, if your business, your trust is eligible as well. Sorry, just to clarify that, I'm not saying eligible as well in terms of you as individuals, as trustees or as beneficiaries. I mean that if your business has suffered the required downturn to be an eligible employer.
From Colin, I have a staff member who was on sick leave for the past week, but fully employed prior to that. The sickness is physical injury in their own time and not COVID related. I've paid them full salary, either for hours or accrued sick leave. Can I apply the JobKeeper instruction to reduce hours to equivalent $1,500 per fortnight on their return to work when the medical certificate expires?
Yes, only on their return, because they're currently on sick leave. There's a provision that stops you from doing JobKeeper enabled stand down or reduction in hours whilst they're away. You basically got to consult with them when they come back and do it there.
Okay. Josephine asks one that you've touched on many times too, but this time slightly different. What is the ATO process for June JobKeeper? Do we have to go in and apply once again?
June JobKeeper, I like it. That's forward thinking. No, you'll carry on with your. This will all become a bit clearer over the course of May. You carry on paying the $1,500 in the fortnights, and then over the course of May, the reporting requirements will become clearer. And in essence, all that, as I understand, you're going to do is keep reporting and then also keep nominating through single touch payroll.
Okay. From Heather, what is the absolute latest a business can register for April JobKeeper? I have a client whose accountant is not being helpful.
Hi Heather. The latest that you can apply for April is the 31st of May. So they extended that provision so that you can. Oddly, though, you're meant to have paid JobKeeper for any back pay that you might have to pay, top-ups, by the 8th of May. So you can apply on the 31st, but you should have done top-ups by the 8th.
Okay. From Valerie, she's a client, RMH Homes.
Yep.
I went onto the portal to register that April would possibly be our downturn month we lodge quarterly. I did not see where you had to actually input GST figures. We use single touch payroll when paying wages, and I've been topping up 2 employees since the 30th of March. Should I be doing something that I'm not aware of? Our accountant has been unwell for many months and is in ICU at the moment, so I can't get support.
No, the answer to that is you sound like you're doing the right thing. You go through the portal, you nominate as an eligible employer, you've done the back pay to your employees, you go through single touch payroll and you nominate those employees through your single touch system, do that by the 8th, and you should get paid in due course.
Okay. Emily says, if we pay weekly, must we pay $750 per week, or can one week be down and the following week up, making at least $1,500 per fortnight? Also, can we do a top-up for a previous fortnight in this pay run? How will the ATO know which fortnight the top-up is for?
There's basically going to be a reasonable allocation principle, particularly at the moment where you're back paying for more than one fortnight, which going forward you should be doing in the fortnight or pretty near as to it. in terms of whether you're up one week and down the other, you need to have got $1,500 for that fortnight. So as long as over the course of the fortnight you've got $1,500, you'd be fine.
Okay. And somewhat related from Maria, can we pay our staff members fortnightly the JobKeeper payment, or do we have to do it weekly, like we were doing our payroll in the past?
Do your payroll as you used to. You might not be allowed to, well, you're not allowed to change it unless your staff agree to that, particularly on this weekly to fortnightly one. You know, essentially what you'd be doing is reducing the cash flow of your staff if you move to fortnightly pay. Certainly if I was getting paid weekly at the moment, I'd probably have something to say if my employer said, no, you're going to fortnightly. It's better for your employees at weekly, and I suspect they wouldn't want you to change that.
And in line with our new mantra of bringing it in at around 45 minutes, can I finish with some comments?
You can. I didn't mention that mantra actually. We'll if we find that we're not answering all the questions during the day, we'll stick to the hour. But we're going to trim the sessions down to 45 minutes for now, just so. The idea really is to keep them as sustainable for as long as possible. So let's wrap up with a couple of questions / comments, hopefully.
Okay, one from Heather. Ed, no such thing as too many coffees. Brandon says, the service has been awesome. Really put me at ease through all of this. Thank you very much. Ali from Maruya.
Maruya says,
Early Learning Centre, you were right yesterday. Maruya, we're all really pleased to hear that your team will be visiting us soon.
Good, excellent. Have they given like a phonetic spelling?
Yeah.
It's Maruya.
Maruya.
Okay, yep. Good. There we go. I have been down to South Coast, just not quite that far, but I've heard it's beautiful there. So maybe I'll slip down and do their Workplace Ready check myself. But there we go. So just a reminder, guys, on Workplace Ready, this is the narrative that's now building for businesses. JobKeeper's not over. We're going to be carrying on talking about that. But you need to start making sure your head's out of those weeds. Stop looking at your toes. Start looking forward to your workplace being ready. You don't want to be caught napping when others, particularly your competitors, get up and running before you. It's really important you get on top of this now, guys. As ever, we'll be providing free resources through this, employsure.com.au/workplace ready. We will also be going out to Maruya Early Learning Centre as well as other clients and helping them get ready. And if you are not a client and you want to get Workplace Ready, you can register on that website page, employsure.com.au/workplace ready. It will cost $500 for us to come out and do an on-site visit to get you ready. Thank you, guys. See you tomorrow.